In search of the truth, dark, and mystery, it's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Phil J. Pride, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm Daniel, and I hope everybody's having a safe week. It's Thursday. It's Friday Junior, so to speak. And so tomorrow will be the big day. It'll be Friday, and then the weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Big football games this weekend coming up. And so I'll be cheering on my team. I know there's a game going on right now, too. So for those that aren't watching, they're tuning in probably here. So thank you guys for tuning in and joining me. Today, we're going to get back into the Lilly and Jack Sullivan disappearance. We have some interviews that have been dropped and released. One is from, I want to say it's the CBC, and this is the interview, the full interview with Daniel Martell. I haven't seen it. So I'm going to watch it with you guys for the first time. And then we're also going to play an audio from, it's a Criming Shame. They had on they didn't have on, they were playing, Sonny was playing some audio from, I believe her name is Haley. And she was the young lady who found the pink blanket out there. And we're going to listen to some of the things that she had to say, and we'll analyze those things and move forward from there. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Let's break down today's conversation. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. I encourage you guys to be a part of the membership. Hit the join button. We do have a members only Discord, which I did drop a link last night. So if you're a new member or you've been a member and you just haven't checked out the Discord, go to the playlist for members. And the first thing that you'll see there is the link for the Discord. Once you get into our Discord, we have numerous chats. One of the chat groups that we have is on the Jack and Lilly Sullivan case. And so I talk a little bit about some of the things that are going to be coming out, some of the things that are going on. I referenced how I actually tried to make contact with Haley, but she didn't respond back. There was one response, and then that was the end of it. So we talked a little bit about it in the Discord. You can kind of see some of the behind the scenes type of stuff that we talk about, and not just that case, in multiple cases as well. But without further ado, let's break down today's information and conversation. And we're going to start off with Daniel's interview. This is an interview. I have not seen it, so this is going to be my live reaction with you guys. Part of this interview was aired on CBC relating to the cadaver dog search that RCMP had in the area. And they only played like about 2 minutes, and they were talking over a lot of it. I was kind of not too fond of it because I was like, I want to hear what he has to say. I want to know what he's saying. If you guys want a unedited, in-depth video with Daniel, check out the one that I had with him not too long ago. It's in the playlist where you found this one. All right. Without further ado, let's tune in.
The cadaver dogs or the human remains dogs were here recently. Walk me through that day. You knew that they were coming, but you didn't know.
All right. Let me adjust some things real quick. And it's a little low, so let me increase the volume.
When?
I actually got back from a visit with my daughter, and I come home and the dogs were already, on scene, and they were there for about an hour before I got there. I didn't know the exact day when the arrival was going to happen. It was even a surprise to me, but at the end of the day, everything's ruled out there, and I hope this is speculation, turns elsewhere.
So you arrive home after visiting with your daughter.
At the end of the day, we were already, on scene, and they were there for about an hour before I got there. I didn't know the exact day when the arrival was going to happen. It was even a surprise to me, but at the end of the day, everything's ruled out there, and I hope this is speculation, turns elsewhere.
So he talks about how he was visiting his daughter. Mondays, I believe, are his day to visit Meadow. And so he was out visiting his daughter. And when he arrives, police were already there. They didn't notify them beforehand when they were going to go. So he wasn't aware that they were showing up. It was I guess a shock to him is basically what he just said. And they were there for about an hour. And he kind of mentions like, hey, they've cleared him. They've gone through it a few times. He's hoping that now speculation can move on from him, which I can understand why he feels that way. Let's continue.
Drive home after visiting with your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
They're there, and then what happens?
They're there, and then, I walk up, greet them, and meet them for the very first time and say, can I come close to you and the dogs? And he said, oh, yeah. And then, investigators were there, or one investigator, and, had a conversation with him, and they said, look, yeah, we're going to do the property. I said, perfect, let's do every square inch. And that's when it began with, where do you think we should search? And in my mind, these guys are the best. They're supposed to be the best. They should have mapped the terrain, looked at satellite imagery, and found every single speck on that property that needed to be searched. And they should have had, better coordination with reviewing those maps and people involved from the start with search and rescue to determine areas they need to search.
What happened? Did you tell them?
Sounds like Daniel was a little bit skeptical about their planning going into it. Just based on what he's saying here, kind of listening to what he's saying, it sounds like because they asked him, like, where should we search? He found it odd that they should have already had that planned out and mapped out. I don't disagree with him. But I also think that this could have been a tactic to get him to say something, perhaps. I mean, at the end of the day, he's RCMP has cleared him, for the most part. They've come out and they've talked about it. And I'm going to show a video, and I'm going to play a video of what RCMP said after this investigation that kind of leads me to believe that they truly believe that Daniel, Maleyha, and Janie had nothing to do with this or anything nefarious. And so I guess maybe perhaps, just kind of throw it out there. Hey, where should we search? Maybe he's going to say something that he hasn't said before or something. But it sounds like he just kind of pointed to them at the areas that they needed to go.
Where to search or advise them? Or what did you
I
say?
gave them any indication that, saw.
I'll explain this again for those that don't understand what being cleared is. Being cleared is a media terminology, for one. Now, what law enforcement use when they talk about somebody not being cleared is we don't believe they're involved. We have no evidence of a crime, and there's no criminal offense that may have occurred, which are all the terms that they've used in this case. Now, if you look at Idaho and you look at how when they spoke with and about Jack Decor, when they spoke about Hoodie Guy and Moscow Police Department cleared them, they said, at this time, we do not believe that these individuals are involved. And they weren't. Brian Koberger was arrested, charged, and pled guilty to the offense of the quadruple homicide. And there was a lot of skepticism and things of that nature. In fact, you know what? Let's play it now. For those that refuse to hear it, let's play it now. Does this sound like it's coming, like RCMP is referring to somebody who is a suspect?
And I would like to say that, this is a very tough time for the public at large, the investigators, but especially the family.
This is a hard time for investigators and everybody involved, but especially the family. What family do you think they're talking about when it comes to Lilly and Jack? Talking about Maleyha, they're talking about their stepfather Daniel, they're talking about the grandmother Janie. They could be talking about Belinda and her efforts and all of their family. Okay. Let's rewind that again. So you guys that are refusing to hear this.
Public at large, the investigators, but especially the family. I can't imagine what they must be going through. We're doing the best we can to get answers for them and everybody else in this situation.
I can't imagine what they're going through. And, it's because of some of the things like this is why they're going, what he's referring to when I can't imagine what they're going through. They have come out and said, hey, we've questioned them multiple times. We've interrogated them. We've taken their phones. We looked at their bank statements. We looked at their GPS locations. We've polygraph tested them multiple times. And they have continued to cooperate, have not lawyered up with a criminal lawyer, and have not told law enforcement no at anything, including the searches. And yet we have folks here, just because they can't connect more than one dot or see past what's in front of them, see playing chess instead, checkers instead of chess. That's why they're going through some of the things that they're going through. You're part of the problem, CB Canada, as to why he's saying this. And again, I'll play it again for you.
And I would like to say that, this is a very tough time for the public at large. The investigators.
I'm not familiar with that case, but was he arrested?
I can't imagine what they must be going through. We're doing the best we can to get answers for them and everybody else in the.
Now, this doesn't sound like something somebody would say about a suspect. I mean, come on, let's use some brains here, guys. Let's use some brains. Does this sound like something that law enforcement would say about somebody they truly suspected had something to do with this or had some nefarious actions or something of that nature? Come on now. This isn't hard to figure out. This isn't, some sort of advanced mathematics. These are simple dots. This is the investigation that they led. The results of that investigation, they themselves have said, we are doing this to eliminate them, they're talking about Maleyha, eliminate her as a suspect. And that was the whole purpose of doing all of the investigation, was to rule out if there was a criminal offense or a criminal crime in nature of some sort. And yet, because maybe perhaps you don't want to admit you're wrong, and you rather put some poor family through hell who's already missing their kids and saying, screw it, let's kick them while they're down. Let's continue to do that. Let's continue to kick them while they're down when law enforcement, because guess what, CB Canada, law enforcement knows a hell of a lot more than you. A hell of a lot more than you. They have more information and more access than you would ever dream about. Just because you're watching some random people talk about things that have no experience. It's like, I mean, some of these questions and some of these comments that I get, it's kind of like, you have a doctor that comes out here and says, hey, we have a microscopic, disease that is happening, and we have this in front of us, and we can tell based off of these things that this microscopic disease is hurting people. And then here comes CB Lamb or CD Lamb, CB Canada is coming in saying, hey, my gym teacher friend down the street says he can't see anything microbiological, and the neighbor across the street from that person, he's a trash collector, and then the guy 3 blocks down the road from there, he's unemployed, but he sounds cool. All those guys say that because they can't see the thing that you need a telescope or a microscope to see, since they can't visually see it, we think you're wrong, doc. We think you're wrong. That's how ignorant some of these questions and comments come out. That's why I block them. And that's why I time them out, because I don't got time for the ignorant stuff like that. Again, does RCMP or does any law enforcement entity ever speak about a suspect in this manner?
And I would like to say that, this is a very tough time for the public at large, the investigators, but especially the family. I can't imagine what they must be going through. We're doing the best we can to get answers for them and everybody else in this situation. So
they have Daniel derangement syndrome. Yeah. They got something, that's for sure. I mean, to a hammer, everything's a nail. And like I said, I understand why you would have been suspect of this man or any of these guys at first. 100%. I would have been there with you guys. I would have been there. I would have been like, hey, they missed school. That's suspicious. Those things. I would have been there. But as the information and as evidence started to relay itself, and as RCMP themselves have come forward, as they themselves have come forward and said, hey, this is the investigation that we've done, which you have to ask yourself, why are they doing that? RCMP doesn't give out information about their investigations. You know why? It's because there's this mass of people who are constantly blaming these folks. And I think that RCMP feels obligated to have to say something before somebody does something stupid against them, because they have these weird ideas or these outlandish ideas that they may have been involved with no evidence of anything like that happening, to the point where the RCMP have come out and said it multiple times. Not only did they put it in the documents, but they have said it multiple times in interviews. It's like, all right, what do they have to do? Tattoo it on your forehead for you to believe it? Like, at what point do you want to believe it? It's just ridiculous at this point, guys. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be disrespectful and things like that. But I get these ridiculous comments and these ridiculous stuff. And then I get, why are you timing us out? Why are you not letting us speak? Because I don't got time for things like that. If you want to go and talk about things that are make-believe, or you want to talk about conspiracy theories when it comes to, hey, could have this happened? Could have that happened? There's some channels out there for you to go and watch. You can go and, comment all you want there. Go for it. Nobody's stopping you. You're not going to hurt my feelings. If you unsubscribe or do this or do that, I don't care. When I was covering the Bryan Kohberger case, I'm very open-minded. I am very unbiased. And in the beginning of that case, I was following the evidence and I was like, hey, I don't know if they got a strong enough case to convict this guy. And I had a bunch of pro-burgers coming across and saying, woohoo, all this other stuff, right? But as the evidence started to come out, and as I followed the evidence and I started to move away, I started to lose a lot of subscribers, people who couldn't handle the fact that I was following the evidence and not just following whatever I said first, because that's not following the evidence. The circumstances that existed in the beginning were no longer the same circumstances that existed at the time when I started to believe 100%, without a doubt, that Bryan Kohberger committed the crime. It didn't take very long for me to do that. It was a very quick process. But in that time, I lost a lot of subscribers. Asked me if I gave two craps. I didn't. In fact, I said, I would prefer you guys to go so that you guys can weed yourselves out, so that the rest of us can have a logical and common sensual conversation. And so I'll say that here too. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I don't care if you cry about me timing you out. I don't care if you go to other channels and cry about it. If you want a lollipop or a sucker, by all means, go get yourself one. But I'm not going to feel bad for you here.
Off-grounded areas like the marsh, the ponds, anything like that. But I said, you're welcome to do it anywhere. They did inside the house. They did, everywhere. Vehicles. They did everything they could in the amount of time that they were given to do it.
So what did they search when they came inside? How did that go?
Well, when they took the dogs inside the house, they ran from one side of the house to the other, waiting for the dogs to, bark or pick up a scent, and nothing was located. Same with all the property. There was no indication of anything. They didn't do it once. They took in both dogs. They did the whole thing. They did up the road. They did the blanket site. They did pipeline where the blueprint was found. They exhausted every single area within Lansdowne.
Yeah, the pipeline trail right here where we're standing.
Mm-hmm. They did. They spent.
So as you can see right here, and we'll get back into the conversation now that I got that out of the way. I've been so sick and tired of the comments that I've been getting. It's been ridiculous. So as you can see, that area back there, it's not like you can't walk through it. It's manageable. It's not like the rest of the areas that are super dense. And I wasn't there in May, and I haven't seen any pictures of it in May. I do know recently that it did look fairly overgrown, and that even Janie had mentioned that it was overgrown here recently, and that they hadn't cut it down, possibly due to some of the recent weather, which kind of was an indication that they did maintain it. Obviously, they have to go down the pipeline and go and maintain it every so often, check for things and do things of that nature. And so I would expect it to be somewhat maintained, so that way it would be manageable and navigatable to go through the pipeline to get there. And so with that being said, it's not out of the realm of possibility for a couple of kids to wander off into the woods there.
Every hour they could, searching, not, planning or anything like that. I mean, they were boots on the ground, just doing whatever they could.
You were mentioning that you had a bit of a tense reaction with one of the dog handlers. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it was a little bit heartbreaking and saddening to hear what the words that came out of his mouth.
I want to say thank you to Lori McNutt coming in and saying intellectual conversations are much needed with facts. Thank you for being here. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you guys. You guys rock. Thank you, TCF, for being a member for 8 months as well. All right. So I'm aware of this conversation that happened with RCMP, a dog handler, which these dog handlers had to be flown in. Now, I'm assuming they probably got some sort of background check into what they're looking for, what they're searching for. But, a debriefing, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm assuming they did get some sort of debrief, but I don't think they've been debriefed into everything that was going on. These guys aren't local. So I wouldn't be surprised if, they took an outside view of it. Like I said, when I first got wind of this case, when this case came across, I had no idea. You know what I mean? I had no idea what was going on. In fact, Crime and Shame had invited me onto their channel, and they asked me not to look into anything so that I could have a fresh set of eyes and unbiased look. And that's what I did. I knew that there was 2 kids missing, but that was about the gist of it. I think that I kind of knew that there was some folks that were leaning towards the fact that the parents of the kids had maybe had something to do with it. I had no idea what the position of Charmaine or Sonny was on the channel. I didn't know which way they were leaning or not leaning. And so I went in it with that mindset. And so initially, just kind of hearing the first few things, kids didn't go to school, this, that, and a third. I can understand if somebody looked into it very loosely or just briefly into it, how they probably would have their suspicions. Again, I don't doubt anybody for having their suspicions, even now. And I'm not saying that Daniel's innocent or not. I'm just saying that at this point, there's no evidence that links him to it. But if RCMP arrested him tomorrow and they showed some sort of evidence saying that he did something and there was a probable cause affidavit or something of that nature that's equivalent in Canada, and I was able to look at the evidence and say, hey, well, I guess they lied to us or whatever the case may have been. And, this is the evidence, and I'd follow it, to see if they have a case and are also, what the evidence is. I just highly doubt, based on the information, based on the things that they have said, not just here recently, but in documents and in multiple interviews. I strongly suspect that that's not going to happen. And so with this conversation they had, what he had told me was that the guy kind of, and Daniel was pretty upset about it when he messaged me. He was like, hey, the guy accused or said something that made me feel like he was accusing me, and wanted me to say something that didn't happen or something to that nature. Now, again, I haven't watched this interview, so I'm reacting in real time. So I don't know what he's going to tell. I didn't go too far into it because unless he confessed to them and they arrested him, not to sound harsh, but his feelings and, those things don't matter in the sense of the case, right? Like if they piss him off, that doesn't mean he didn't do something. It doesn't mean he did something. To me, it's unfortunate. To me, I don't think it doesn't seem like he did something. I don't think him nor Maleyha nor Janie or I don't think any of the family members had something. I strongly believe that they either wandered off and or perhaps somebody that lived close by maybe pick them up if they did wander off. I think there's that possibility. I strongly doubt a lot of this other stuff, even the stuff that Daniel's saying. Like, I don't believe that Maleyha had somebody take the kids and had the blanket planted. I don't believe that. And even with, like, for instance, Haley, I reached out to her. She responded. I told her who I was and that I would like to talk to her about the case. She never responded back. So her not responding to me doesn't change my opinion about whether or not she had some involvement or not. Right? It's, if she don't want to talk to me, she don't want to talk to me. That's not going to make me go, oh, well, you know what? I think she did something. Not at all. I still don't think she did anything.
And for me, all I was trying to do was ever help. Like, that's all I've been doing, is cooperating, and to see that and hear that, I mean, it was pretty saddening.
What did he say?
He said your Thursday and all the way leading into Friday morning, there's not enough detail. And I said to him that Thursday was just an ordinary day until I woke up on Friday morning. And that's when, like, life changed. There was nothing like life changing on Thursday.
All right. So what Daniel's probably referring to, and I'm hoping this isn't edited. I hope his whole interview was 9 minutes. Daniel, if you're in the live chat, if you would, let me know. But I think what he's talking about is that because he doesn't remember much about Thursday, and he has, I mean, who would remember a random day out of the week, right? Like, even if I asked you, like, hey, what did you do yesterday at 3:16 p.m.? You know, or he wasn't working that day. If I told you the last day that you had a day off, because some people might say, oh, I was at work, and they can kind of correlate things. He wasn't at work. So if somebody were to say, hey, 45 minutes after you woke up on Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, what was the first thing you did? And then 35 minutes after that, what you're doing? And that would be very difficult for anybody to try to figure out, you know. it would be very difficult. And for Thursday, and I think that's what he's trying to say, is that the officer accused him of not giving enough information for Thursday, which I'm kind of like, how does this guy that's traveling from not internationally, but traveling from outside of their state, from other parts of the country into the area, like, you know, it's a weird statement for him to have made. But hey, I mean, to be honest with you, if I was on the search and there was a guy who I thought that there was a slim possibility, I might say something like that to him too. Hey man, you know, we really don't, you know, try to push a button, see if he gets hot, see if he says something, you know, a statement just kind of thrown out there out of nowhere. You know what I mean? So I don't fault the officer for trying, not one bit. You know, I know it doesn't feel good for Daniel and things like that, but I don't fault the officer for trying.
Like, life changed. There was nothing like life changing on Thursday. It was a normal day. So, therefore, there was nothing detailed that needed to be remembered that day until Friday morning.
So he was mentioning something along the lines of something happened Thursday night, and your story isn't matching up?
Yeah, well, not just matching, it didn't have enough detail for him, personally. And then that's when I asked him, do you know anything on the case? And he said, not really. I've seen you on the news once. And that kind of alarmed me, or, you know, shocking, because you're having somebody that's trying to get you to admit to something and they don't know any details. So therefore, my Thursday didn't have any details. Your knowledge of the case didn't have any details. So you shouldn't try to force something on me without knowing any of the background.
Did he make any accusations at you?
Marlene says Daniel is no longer the stepdad. Well, they call him the stepdad here. In fact, it's a stepfather of missing kids, explains cadaver's dog search. And just because you separate from partners, not necessarily kids. So just because they're no longer together, there's been multiple occasions, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are willing to fight you in the live chat. that'll say that a step parent, you know, and their parents separate, and that they still see the step parent as their step parent or parent, even though the relationship with the parents are no longer together. When Jack and Lily went missing, their biological father was not in the picture. He hadn't been in the picture for a very long time, and these were some very young kids. This was their only father that they knew. So whether you like that or not, that's just the truth.
Yeah, he did. He said that Thursday didn't have enough details, and we think you did something to the kids Thursday night. And I asked him, like, what are you talking about? Like, I just ran through whole Thursday and Wednesday with you. Like, we just spent the last 20 minutes talking. And there's not enough detail because I thought it was an ordinary day. In the end, like, cadaver dogs were there. They went through, and the story continues. In conclusion to all this, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm still helping investigators at every turn we could possibly think of. And hopefully we see some kind of resolution soon, or some kind of outcome that's positive.
How is that communication in your relationship with RCMP now, 5 months later, and then given that interaction a few weeks ago?
At this point, I go to them. They don't ever come to me. It's just like I have to contact them, I have to go to them, and it's been like that for a little while now, because I've given them so many leads, and there's only so much I can do.
You see, you know, if you have somebody who you truly suspect, right, you're going to be following them. You're going to be going to them. You're going to want to talk to them. If he's willing to come in every single day, I would have him come in every single day just to say, hey, man, anything, you remember anything, this, that, and a third. Hey, run it by me one more time. Run this, run that. But, you know, what you can get out of him, you know, that might be of importance is because at this point, there's not a lot of evidence pointing to anything, right? And so what could happen? What could be a possibility that could happen that involves Daniel? You know, maybe, I mean, shoot. Because even if it was like an accident, right? Like if some accident occurred, I just find it very, very difficult that he would pass 3 lie detector tests. Maleyha would pass 3 lie detector tests, and not one of them be like inconclusive. You know what I mean? They didn't just come out and not lying or being deceitful. It came out truthful, right? And so, and I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it's you know, lie detector tests aren't admissible in court." True, but that's not to protect law enforcement. That's to protect the person taking the lie detector test. And so, the lie detector tests that are failed don't come out in court, but the lie detector tests that are passed, that's a different story. See, now you're not protecting the victim or the suspect, right? Because he passed it. It's not detrimental to him. In fact, it's the opposite. It's potentially exculpatory to a certain extent. And so in those instances, you will see where an attorney for a defendant will say he passed the lie detector test. So there you go.
I was told not to pursue any leads, so I'm not the one who's going to be going out there investigating.
Why do you pursue leads? Because you're still out there talking to people and finding out new details.
By pursuing leads, they mean if I have a lead, I don't track it down in person. But yeah, like, I'm still open to talk to the public. I have no fake accounts. I don't have anything that would be not under my name. Like, I go fully into every comment with my name present. So I have nothing to hide. People are free to message me whenever, and people are free to discuss anything they want with me. Any angle, any perspective that they have, I'm open to it. And I will pass it along to investigators if it's a solid perspective. Every tip matters. All 800 and almost 900 of them matter.
Do you find that engaging helps for you?
It doesn't help me mentally, that's for sure, but I still do it. I'm basically desensitized to all judgment at this point, so if anybody has anything, you can just come to me, or it's You can go to major crimes. You can go to your local police department. They'll pass along tips, or Crime Stoppers. Because this whole situation has drug on for way too long. It's absolutely destroying everyone involved.
So what does this tell you now that the cadaver dogs were in, they didn't find anything? Do you think like the part in the woods, do you think that's case closed?
It should be case closed. It should have been case closed from the very start. Because with the amount of resources, the technology, and amount of searchers, and everyone deployed in that first initial search, that was a lot. That was an 8-kilometer radius outwards. And it's just the amount of money and people's time, injuries that were sustained during that. It's just, people should have just opened their eyes to see that we need to look elsewhere. I pointed many fingers, and I think that's where the people should look.
Not here.
Not here. Not in the woods. The fingers have been pointed. Let's start taking a look.
What's going through your mind as you see?
Now, Daniel has what I believe is like confirmation bias. He believes because of the actions that Maleyha has had afterwards and her leaving and things like that, that she may be involved. And so he wholeheartedly does not believe that they're in the woods, that Maleyha had, whether it was CPS from the reservation or somebody else, family members of Maleyha's come by and pick up the kids and things of that nature. Now, I don't believe in that. And just because he believes in that, if he's right, I mean, I doubt it, but he could be right, I guess. You know, and if he's wrong, that doesn't mean he's a liar or this, or he's trying to manipulate people. It just means that he's wrong. I mean, there's a lot of people who are wrong that follow this case. That doesn't mean that they're involved. You know what I mean? You can be wrong or inaccurate and not be a liar, is what I'm trying to say.
Their picture every day still.
It's just heartbreaking to know that 5 months have passed and school started, the summer ended. Like, there should be a chance for kids to be interacting and doing kid things, enjoying their lives as kids. You know, like, it's not just all the kids that miss them from school and community, and, you know, at this point, the whole country that, you know they're missing. It's just like, I have kids too that know that they're missing too. And like, that's heartbreaking for them. Like, Meadow doesn't understand, but one day she will. And she knows that Dad spoke up for Jack and Lily when no one else would.
I mean, he's definitely come out a lot. He's been very open. He's done interviews. He's not shied away. He's not blocked anybody or deleted anybody. I have, but he hasn't. You know, I saw on his personal Facebook page, somebody attacked him. He had a picture of himself and his daughter Meadow at one of his visits, and somebody put in the comment section of his personal Facebook page that I hope they take her away and you never see her again, and this, that, and the third. He didn't block her, and he was like, ma'am, you know, please be kind, and this, that, and the third. And I was just like, man, like I would have blocked, I would have privated my stuff. I would have not, there would have been a lot of different things. And so to a certain extent, he's a bigger person than a lot of people when it comes to that. Because, you know, I don't think I would have been, you know, ma'am, please don't be that way. And, you know, I think I would have been a lot more rude. That's for sure. That's for sure. Mark says, Daniel is wrong about the search. SAR only work when you search in the right places. They obviously didn't. I mean, they still could have even searched in the right places and they still could have gotten it wrong. Now, I strongly suspect if they, you know, his property is different, right? You know, you had 2 dogs that searched everywhere. And so his property is more maintained. It's smaller. It's a smaller area that you can look, you know, and you had 2 dogs go through that small place, you know, is around his residence and things like that multiple times. The likelihood of them missing something on his property is a lot lower than the likelihood of them missing something out in the open. Right. So I strongly suspect that they may even have come fairly close to something or whatever the case may have been. And it's just so dense and they could have been just a tad bit too far and came very close to them or to something, a backpack, a shoe, something. I know a lot of people say, hey, well, there wasn't anything left behind. That's not necessarily true. They found footprints and they found a blanket. So that is something. All right. Let's bring up what Haley had to say. So this was on A Criming Shame. I believe last night they had Haley, who's a relative of Maleyha. Now I have my own clips of some of the things that Haley says. I'm not going to play them because I haven't spoken to Haley, and I'd rather speak to her and get her side of things before I would do that. You know what I mean? I'd rather get them myself instead of this way. So I'm not going to do that, but I do have them and they kind of contradict a little bit of what she's saying. So I'll speak to them, but I won't. Maybe I'll play a little bit just so I can prove that I have them, but that'll be about it. So let's listen to this.
It's constantly filled with worst case scenarios.
All right, let's turn this up real quick. But she said something's constantly filled with worst case scenarios.
I feel helpless. Like the feeling of helplessness is immense. Shock and emotional numbness trying to process a situation even 5 months later is not getting any easier, and I don't know if it ever will. Because we have no real answers, no solid truth. And even for a second, I sit here with the what ifs. Like, what if I knew what was going on in that home? Could I have intervened? Could other family members have intervened? We didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. Maleyha never said anything. The kids never said anything. They never.
So right here, she don't know anything. For one, she's straight out saying, and I don't know anything. Maleyha never said anything about something going on, and neither did the kids. I think that's pretty strong. We didn't know anything. They never said anything happened. So it sounds like somebody who is suspicious, obviously, of Daniel, and is looking at him as being somebody to be suspicious about, but also not realizing that she's correlating the fact that nobody ever said he did anything wrong.
Feeling of helplessness is immense. Shock and emotional numbness trying to process a situation even 5 months later is not getting any easier, and I don't know if it ever will. Because we have no real answers, no solid truth. And even for a second, I sit here with the what ifs. Like, what if I knew what was going on in that home? Could I have intervened? Could other family members have intervened? We didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. Maleyha never said anything. The kids never said anything. They never showed signs of anything. Like, kids don't just up and vanish. We all know that. It doesn't.
That's not true. Kids do sometimes get up and walk out. Kids wander. Kids have gotten lost in the woods. It's more common than you think.
Home. Could I have intervened? Could other family members have intervened? We didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. Maleyha never said anything. The kids never said anything. They never showed signs of anything. Like, kids don't just up and vanish. We all know that. It doesn't happen. It's a heartbreaking mystery. I sit here day in and day out and hope for good news. But at this point, I don't know if we'll ever have any good news. Trying to navigate this has all been overwhelming. Like, literally overwhelming. It's unimaginable trauma to have a niece and nephew go missing, both at the same time at that. I just feel lost, helpless, and completely heartbroken.
I feel for her. To have a family member missing, it must be very hard, and like I said, in many cases, it's not uncommon for people to turn on each other I talk about a case that happened out here with a couple of folks who were expecting a baby, and the day that she was supposed to go and get induced, she didn't show up. She went missing. People assumed that the boyfriend did something because he was also missing, and the family started turning on each other once the female's family started saying that the the boyfriend did something and he's on the run and this, that, and a third. They end up finding them both shot in a car, not too far away from the killer's house. So they went through their phones and stuff, and they ended up finding out through certain apps and stuff like that, encrypted apps too. So for those that say you have an encrypted app, you can't figure this out, through encrypted apps, that they were able to find out that they were selling drugs, both of them, and ended up being a bad drug sale. The girlfriend is the one who actually set up the buy, and then it's something, the guy that killed him said that he set up the buy and that the guy tried to, I guess, fight him or got upset at him, and he pulled out his gun. They fought for the gun, and then boom, the gun goes off point blank into the young lady's head. And then after that happens, they fight for the gun again, and then boom, the gun goes off point blank into the boyfriend's head. Some inconsistencies there. Fighting and the gun going off point blank is not a consistent thing. Those are real inconsistencies. And so, he ended up getting charged. But the families turned on each other. The young lady's family were really blaming the boyfriend's boyfriend and his family, and it was both of their faults to a certain extent. They both were involved. She's the one that created the buy. So I mean, the families just turned on each other. They became really ugly, and it's not uncommon when you don't have answers, especially when you don't have answers, for people to start to turn on each other.
And then grappling with the conflicting emotions that come with the not knowing part. It'll literally eat you alive if you let it. I arrived May 2nd between 2 and 2:30. I didn't even know Jack and Lily were missing until 1:30 that day, and I seen it on Facebook in a post that was shared. You imagine, you just get home from work, you sit down, you open your phone just to scroll, and then you see that. Your niece and nephew missing. I can't even explain the hurt and the heartache when I seen that. I had to message some people and get the address of where this happened, because I didn't even know where Maleyha lived. I didn't speak to her for 2 years. And keep in mind, I'm not familiar with that area.
So she didn't really talk to Maleyha. She hadn't spoken to her for 2 years. They haven't had any conversation. So when she said, that whole beginning part, like, we would have known what was going in the house, it doesn't seem like they were very close either, right? It sounds like the information that she's getting is all coming third party, not necessarily from Maleyha herself. And unfortunately, when you get third party information, it's not always the most accurate information. Sometimes some things are exaggerated. Sometimes things are left out on purpose and not on purpose, and things of that nature. The stories I have heard, especially like in a smaller town, that spread very quickly, and how rapidly they change, going from one person to the next. But I thought this was fairly important, that she really didn't talk to Maleyha. She hadn't talked to her for 2 years. She wasn't very close. Meadow, I don't even think Meadow's 2 or maybe 3. So she would have been very young, if not even born, by the last time they spoke. So how much do they really know, or how much does she really know about Maleyha and Daniel? You know what I mean?
The hurt and the heartache when I seen that. I had to message some people and get the address of where this happened, because I didn't even know where Maleyha lived. I didn't speak to her for 2 years. And keep in mind, I'm not familiar with that area. I live 45 minutes away. So I got all the details that I needed to head down, and I was there between 2 and 2:30. And as for Daniel wanting a polygraph, I just want to say, if the RCMP took him seriously and really thought that blanket was planted, my ass would have been hauled in there long and ever ago for a polygraph. That's never once came up from them. He's just making himself look worse and worse with all this new stuff coming about.
She did find it, though. Now, I have no idea how accurate the information is about the bus passing by and it not capturing it on camera. I don't know. I don't know if Daniel has seen the bus video himself. I know he's told me that law enforcement have told him that. And if law enforcement have told him that, law enforcement, it's a little bit different for law enforcement than for, to lie than for people to lie to law enforcement, right? A person lies to law enforcement, that's a crime. Law enforcement, however, can lie to the public and to persons. And I know what a lot of people are going to say is like, oh, well, maybe that's what they're doing this whole time. Not to this degree. Not to the degree that they're putting it in documents, they're doing it in interviews, and now they're saying that, they feel bad for the family. That's a different scenario. And not for this long period of time, because you're setting up a false sense of security. If they truly suspected that Daniel did something and they're going out there and going to this degree to say that he didn't, somebody could get involved with him. Somebody could have kids and put themselves in a serious situation. And if something happened, I think they would have a case against the RCMP for saying, hey, you guys said that he wasn't suspected of anything, blah, 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 blah. So I think that there's an argument to be made there for that, that you would be setting a false sense of security for the immediate area and anybody who may come in contact with him. But I don't know about when they told that to Daniel, what their thoughts were, law enforcement, that is, what they were thinking at the process they were at in their investigation. Had they already, done the lie detector test? Had they already gotten back the footage from the day before? Like, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered first when it comes to the information that they gave Daniel and when they gave it to him. Because they could have been lying to him to see if he says something or trips up in some form or fashion, right? So especially if it was earlier on, and I'm talking about probably within the first 3 months since they went missing, I would say that it may not be 100% accurate. They may be some sort of, it could be some sort of way of trying to get him to just talk, right? Now, if it was after that, after all the investigation, after they had cleared him, after they put all this information and they still told him that, now that's a different scenario. Those are different circumstances. That might lead me to believe that there's a higher possibility that the information is more accurate. But if a bus passes by at 3:51 and it doesn't pick up the blanket on camera, and the camera's found at 4 o'clock, 9 minutes later, it's kind of weird. In a rural area where there's not a lot of people, it's a little weird. Now, I have talked to some folks, and somebody had mentioned to me that maybe they thought that the blanket was found before the bus passed by at 3:50, that it was around 4 o'clock, but it was before the bus passed, and that's why it's not out there. If that's the case, that's a change of circumstances. Those are different circumstances, different situation, and that blanket could have been there a whole lot earlier. And it may have, like I said, the circumstances changed, the evidence changed. So I don't know the answer to that fully. I'm going to guess that if it was seen on camera or not seen on camera and 10 minutes later it's found by Haley, that they would have at least questioned her about it at the very minimum. And the fact that they didn't kind of leads me to believe, based on what she's saying. Now, I'm also taking her word for it when she says that they haven't questioned her or anything. But based off of that, I think it's probably more so a tactic that they use to try to get Daniel to talk versus perhaps the possibility of the blanket not being there. But I am open to both possibilities. Because again, I haven't seen the footage myself. The person that I spoke to, Daniel, he hasn't seen the footage himself. He's only talked to people who have. And like I mentioned before, third-party information isn't always accurate. So I don't know. But given the fact that Haley wasn't questioned so hard, I don't necessarily believe that, one, that RCMP buy it, which, I don't buy that Maleyha and, had her family or had the reservation, CPS reservation, come by and take her kids. I don't buy it one bit. So that could also be part of it. Now, me not buying Daniel's theory, does that mean I think he did something? Obviously not. I just think that, like many of us, we can be wrong about things.
My ass would have been hauled in there long and ever ago for a polygraph. That's never once came up from them. He's just making himself look worse and worse with all this new stuff coming about. Same as, you know, saying that Maleyha took 2 of his shirts from the house. That didn't happen either. Okay,
and so again, Daniel thought that, and then after a while, I believe I talked to Janie or Daniel, and they said that they were wrong. They found the shirts or whatever. Them being wrong about something isn't something that's necessarily a lie. You know what I mean? He couldn't find them. He assumed that she took them. It doesn't mean he lied. That just means he was wrong. He was inaccurate. There's a difference between being wrong and inaccurate and intentionally lying. So I just wanted to clarify that there.
Worse and worse with all this new stuff coming about. Same as, you know, saying that Maleyha took 2 of his shirts from the house. That didn't happen either. Okay, so as for the bathroom incident, I guess if that's what you want to call it, when I went in after him, after he was wrestling around in there, there was something there. I couldn't tell you what it was. Could have been a substance, could have been anything.
There was something there. I couldn't tell you what it was. It could have been a substance. It could have been anything. That's weird. Because, I mean, you can kind of tell if it's powder. You can tell if it's a pill, if it's a liquid. You know what I mean? What do you mean by a substance? And it could have been anything. It could have been, because then the other question is like, all right, could have been these things, but you send this and say this is what it was. Now, I am assuming you're thinking this here, this battery is a substance, I'm assuming, maybe, or maybe this right here is your substance. But this is what you took a picture of on the water heater. Now, I know some people are looking and saying, oh, this looks like a baggie with something. Look at the color of this here, the metallic color, and look at that. That's the same color, right? That's not a substance in it. Those are bends. That's a different reflection, right? This is a battery without the plastic stuff around it. And this is the, check this out. You see the points? You see how they're burnt? You see the points? See how they're burnt? That's a battery. It's got a lot of stuff there. This is why it's burnt. It's a lighter. Creates a thing there. So, is this the substance you were referring to? And I know she said here recently, like, hey, he's just turning things on himself. You know, he's making up stuff, trying to make other people look bad. I don't think that's the case. I think he's being suspicious. I have audio where she says herself that she's suspicious of Maleyha, and that how the family is suspicious of each other, and that some part of the family believes what Durwood says, which he believes that there's something to do with the Indian reservation, which I don't. And so my question is if your own family, Haley, believes in it, why are you surprised that Daniel believes in it? You get what I'm saying?
I don't know what it was, but it was definitely something that, you know, was there, and then it wasn't there after he had gone back in. And Maleyha had broke down at the end of the driveway and had said that, you know, he's been using meth for 2 years. So that's where that came from, where I said, you know, like there was drugs involved. That's where that came from.
So she doesn't really know. You know, Maleyha broke down and said he's been using meth for 2 years. Okay. I just feel I find it odd that law enforcement couldn't find evidence of him using meth, because that would be a crime. And buying, selling, and potentially even endangering kids by having meth around are all criminal offenses. And when you look at other crimes where they have investigated people who've also committed criminal offenses who weren't necessarily involved in the crime that they were investigating, they got charged, they got arrested. The one that I can point out that I think a lot of people here have watched and listened to is the Delphi case. Ron Logan was not the bridge guy, yet he went to jail because during their investigation of him, they found out that he was violating his parole. Now, that was the whole reason why he made up an alibi and all this other stuff, is because he was drinking and, he didn't want to go to jail. And that ended up what happening. Keegan Kline had child X-rated footage on his phone from messaging and catfishing young ladies, including one of the victims. They thought it was him. They couldn't ever put it on him, but they sure did arrest him for the child X-rated footage he had on his phone. So, if he was doing drugs, it's not very difficult to figure that out. If he's buying drugs, he'd have to buy it to use it. Well, he'd have to either buy it or make it, right? It's for him to be using it. She used the term meth. So if he's making it, where's the lab? All right. They went through his phones. They went through his locations. They're not seeing him going to a random shop or trailer or random place in the middle of the forest, the cook shop. They can't find it. They can't find a receipt or a trail of him purchasing the things that he would need to cook, said meth or whatever, and if he's selling it, they're not able to go through his phone and find the messages for him selling and or buying it. None of those things exist. They kept his phone for a week and they gave him another one. You don't think they monitored the one they gave him? You don't think they monitored him the day that he left? You don't think they followed him to make sure that he didn't go to somebody's house and say, hey, I got a new phone. Don't call my other phone, because if you call or text my other phone, the cops have it. You don't think they would have followed him and made sure of that? They were following the guy. They were watching him. He's even told me that. Yeah, just because they don't believe he's a suspect today does not mean that they didn't believe that in the very beginning of the investigation. And clearly, based on the documents, they treated him as a suspect. Are they treating him as a suspect today? The answer is no. Were they treating him as a suspect at some point in time? It sure does seem like it.
Anybody can take it as they please. I know what he said. I know what I had seen. But just to clarify that, I guess, if that helps. So that question, Sunny, regarding Daniel saying that my side of the family has the children hidden, that I'm a part of that, that is not the case. And at this point in the case, I'm focused on getting the truth and not pointing fingers at somebody else or looking for revenge towards.
But it kind of sounds like you are, not pointing the fingers at anybody else or looking for revenge. I'm not going to lie. It kind of does seem like it. But Daniel does seem the same way. I'm not going to lie either. Daniel's pissed off that she said all these things about him doing drugs and stuff. So for both of you guys, it looks like you guys are just pissed off at each other. And I do think that both of you guys feel that you have evidence to believe a certain thing happened. And like I told Derwood too, I was like, hey, I understand why you think what you think. You're looking at her actions and her beliefs. I don't buy it. I don't. There's a lot more questions there, that happen, and the answers for those questions, when you deduce it and you try to break it down logically, are just kind of wild and out there. So I don't buy it, but I understand why you do. I understand why people, suspect Daniel too, and I don't fault them for that. I just would like the constant crap to stop on my channel too.
Somebody, and that's what I feel like Daniel's motive is to just take all of the heat off him and his side of the family and swing it a different direction.
But I don't think it's Daniel that's taking the heat off of him. I mean, at least not from my point of view. For me, the reason why I'm not pushing him harder or anything like that, which means I haven't, and I guess hard, and I'm going to say harder because when I first started talking to him, I was skeptical. I was, not just, and I still don't. And like I've told them, and I've told y'all, and I've told Janie, and I've told Daniel, it's not what you guys tell me that make me believe that you guys aren't involved. I I believe you guys aren't involved because of what RCMP is putting out there. And because of what RCMP is putting out there makes you guys more believable to me as well. And so it's kind of a little bit of a circle, but if RCMP was like, nah, we suspect them, this, that, and the third, I probably would be on board with what they were going with there at that point too. So it's food for thought.
As we all know, he's always coming out with something new, like even the latest talks that he did with the DT show. There's information on there that he said that is not in the documents.
The documents are heavily redacted on what Daniel said, for one. And two, I think the documents that were released to Daniel, the ones that he sent to me, I'll put it out there. He got about probably a couple hundred of 500 documents. So there was a couple hundred missing from there as well. That law enforcement or however he got them, he didn't get them from that. They didn't get that. So all of the documents haven't been released. And what was released, especially when it referred to Maleyha, and I had kind of broken this down when we looked through the documents. What was redacted had to do with other people and personal information, but it also had to do with unfounded information. And I believed, and even Daniel told me, he's like, hey, all the stuff that I told him about Maleyha, they redacted it. And when I went in through it and I read it and I started reading when he was talking about their relationship, it talked a little bit about their relationship and then it started to get heavily redacted. So there's no way to know exactly what it is that he told law enforcement, but he's putting it out there, whether it was, on my channel or whatnot, but he put it out there. And I strongly suspect that the stuff that he was putting, because it wasn't founded, because again, I don't really believe that Maleyha did something like this, but I think that law enforcement have come forward and they said they cleared her too. She was just as cooperative, turned over her phone, took a lie detector test willingly, the whole 9 yards. And so, if they went through that and they were able to clear her and eliminate her as a suspect, I'm not going to try to turn her into more of a victim either. You know what I mean? But when she goes on to say that, he came out on the channel and said some things, he was with law enforcement for 4 hours on one of his interrogations. I'm pretty sure he told them a lot more than he even told me.
In a different direction. As we all know, he's always coming out with something new, like even the latest talks that he did with the DT show. There's information on there that he said that is not in the documents. So why are you saying this to the public, and why wasn't it told to the RCMP? It's honestly disheartening. We're 5 months in and still no real answers. That's all we want.
And yeah, she has a lawyer for Meadow. It's a civil lawyer for custody issue. That's not a criminal lawyer to talk to law enforcement with. You get what I'm saying? So she hasn't lawyered up in a criminal manner as a criminal situation to talk to her or to advise her to take or not take the polygraphs, things like that. I can tell you this: if she had a criminal lawyer, she wouldn't have taken the polygraph test. 100% guarantee it. If she had a criminal lawyer that was advising her on the disappearance of Jack and Lilly, she would not have taken the polygraph test. Regardless if she would have passed it or failed it, obviously she passed it. So obviously if she was telling the truth or not, a lawyer would have told her no, because if that thing says you lied, they're going to look at you as if you lied. Now, when it comes to those, those lie detector tests, a false negative is way more common than a false positive, so to speak. So what that means is it's going to say, a person could be truthful and it'd be more common that it'd come back and say that they lied than a person that lied and it come back that they said that they were truthful. In those moments where somebody lies and they kind of get away with something, it usually comes back as inconclusive. And so for two people to be completely truthful on 3 separate lie detector tests taken on the same day, and in a short matter of time after the disappearance, meaning, we got to put this in perspective, meaning that if they did something to these kids, typically when there's a act involving children, it's most of the time an act of the moment where there's somebody was, there was an accident, somebody got lost their temper. Somebody was on drugs. Somebody left drugs around. Like, all those things are crimes that happen in the moment. Those aren't crimes that are premeditated. Like, oh, okay, well, I need to plan this out. These are where all the cameras are. This is where this is, like Brian Koberger did. Those are two separate types of crimes that are being committed. And so where's the time that he spent learning how to pass a lie detector test? And why couldn't they find that information when they were doing his background, whether it was searching through his phone and all this other stuff? Because Google searches will get a lot of people, even Brian Koberger. His Google searches got him too. And so where are those searches on how to pass a lie detector test? And he must have been really good to master it within a week. And if it takes some, random country guy, a guy who lives out in the boonies in the country, if it takes him just a week to figure out how to master a lie detector test and pass it, law enforcement wouldn't be using it as often that they do. Just food for thought there. I think this is actually the end of this.
Okay, so those are
Yeah, that's the end of that. And like I said, I got audio from Haley as well, where she's saying something to the effect. I personally don't think she planted the blanket. I know some folks said something to the effect that that based on audio that the blanket was found closer to 3. So if it was before the bus passed by, then that blanket could have been out there since the early morning hours. And to me, that, or at least since like 11 or 10:30. And to me, if that's the case, those footsteps that are kind of going out in that direction make it more logical and believable for me to believe that the kids could have wandered off and been responsible for the blanket being out there and the footsteps. Let me show you some stuff on Google Earth. I also wanted to play some video of where, because I have it. Janie, I'm probably gonna have to wait until the next time. It's a video where outside Janie's house and how many vehicles passed by. It's like 11 or 13 vehicles in a 3-hour time frame. All right, so let's look at this map real quick. All right, so from Daniel's house to where the blanket was found is 1.6 kilometers, which would have taken a person walking at average speed about 16 minutes to get to. Not very long, very quick. And so this is where the blanket was found. There's a road that leads you this way, up and around, and then it stops here. Now then there's this trail that if you follow and curve around, opens up right here, and you end up right here where this is where the pipeline is. Now, the law enforcement said that the footprint was found between Lansdowne Road and this road here, this dirt road, that it was in the middle. So in the middle would be somewhere around right here, or just slightly southwest of where they would have popped out onto the pipeline from the road that leads up to the blanket. Again, it would have only taken them 16 minutes to arrive here, walking. I believe this is, let me see. It is 1 kilometer walking through to get from where the blanket was to here. So if it took 16 minutes to walk 1.6 kilometers, it probably would have taken another 10 minutes. So you're looking at 30 minutes, leaving the blanket and the footprint out there. And if the kids, if Janie hangs up the phone at 8:51 a.m. with her brother Ron, starting to fall asleep, and here's the kids outside at 9 a.m., they could have been out here by 9:30. 911 wasn't called for an additional 30 minutes. So they could have gone twice as far down this pipeline if they're heading this direction. And if they've, there's other roads, there's lots of other possibilities that they could have just continued to wander. And at any point, if they came across something that spooked them, whether it be a bear or a coyote or mountain lion of some sort, they could have gone in a number of directions. Plus, you have to also factor in that they're probably panicking, and they're very young, 4 and 6 years old, panicking out there. Yeah, you can see where some kids, just not knowing for one, and two, being young, could make some mistakes out there. Now, I do want to show you one thing, guys, because I know a lot of people are saying, well, the cadaver dogs, they could have found them, this, that, and the third. Okay. I want to show you guys something. Another case that I'm covering. This is a Timothy Dees case. This is Frederickstown, Missouri. He called 911 right here. He went missing for 5 months. They brought in cadaver dogs. They couldn't find him. They searched all this. They searched here. Actually, cadaver dog hit on one of the sheds here. Couldn't find him. Did multiple searches. His body was literally 200 yards away in this tree line. This isn't some dense forest. This isn't some crazy place. And look, his body was found in the tree line back here. Could not find him for 5 months. Multiple searches, cadaver dogs, whole 9 yards. And you guys think that maybe perhaps, you know what I'm saying? Hey, Barbara, how's it going? Fredericktown. Barbara's the Timothy Dees' mother. Myself and Dr. Vaughn are actually going to be talking about that case relatively soon, about Timothy Dees. Tomorrow, actually, Dr. Vaughn is going to join me on this case, a doctor in psychology, and she's going to talk about Jack and Lilly and Daniel and Maleyha and some of the mental stuff that are going on. So I bring on some, for those that aren't aware, that haven't been following me very long and only following me on this case, the Brian Koberger case, I brought in world-renowned authors. I brought in law enforcement officers, victims' family members. We spoke with Anjanette Levy from Crime Fix. We've talked to Howard Bloom. We've talked to FBI, former FBI agent, Jennifer Coffindaffer. Here recently, Philip Dubé, LA prosecutor. I was on the show with him. I was the ex-law enforcement officer on the panel. So for those that question my background, I was the ex-law enforcement person on the panel with a retired FBI and the former LA prosecutor. So go take that for, go suck on that one. And so with that being said, I've had a lot of professional persons. I've had a medical forensic death investigator on the channel, former CSI, and myself and Steve, he's actually working this case for as a cold case. And he's trying to get this case with Barbara Hall in the public. And we're trying our best to. I know we've had a lot of stuff pop up, and it's been kind of difficult going back and forth. But my plan is by Saturday, no later than Saturday, is I'm going to do a show on Timothy Dees' case. But this is where he was found, guys. This is how far he was located. And it's just, for those that can't fathom a search not finding a body, or cadaver dogs not finding a body, this should be a good example of how close he was to where the 911 call was made and a search not going anywhere. So close. Yeah. I mean, from here to there, if you want to measure it, about 230 yards, but I think it was actually closer there, about 184 yards is where it was at. So right here, 184 yards. Cadaver dogs couldn't find them, and guarantee you they had more ability to move around out here than they would out there in Nova Scotia. All righty, guys. Well, please put a couple like buttons in there. Hit the subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. I'm going to answer just a few questions. Put some stars. We're going to start now. So if you want to answer your questions, put the stars on now. We're doing this for the next 5 minutes, and then we're going to be calling this a show. But yeah, put some stars in there. Give me your thoughts and theories, and we'll go forward from there. They're not anywhere on that property. I strongly believe they were taken. My visions are not wrong. I mean, they could have been taken. If they walked off the property and the wrong person driving down the street, at the right time, a lot of things can happen there. I don't discredit that possibility. Let's see. Help out Cheryl. Can CPS do that? I'm not sure what's going on. How far could the kids have gotten in 10 minutes? Why Daniel didn't see them? Because I don't believe it was 10 minutes. You had Janie hearing them outside, and the last time that she knew of a time was when her brother called at 8:48. So that's your time frame. 8:48, she heard him shortly after that. So anywhere between 8:48 probably and 9 o'clock. And it wasn't until 10 when 911 was called. So you were looking at an hour. It's not 10 minutes. I'm not sure where we got that from. And if you're going based off of witness statements or witness testimony based on what Daniel and Maleyha said when they woke up and ran out without looking at their phone and guesstimating based off of, just them counting time in their head, it's not going to be accurate. You know what I mean? If I were to tell you right now without looking at a clock or anything, tell me when 7 minutes and 40 seconds expires, and we'll see how close you are. And then we just start having a conversation. It's not going to, we won't be accurate. It's not going to be accurate. I appreciate that, Dana. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. What's going on, Sirius? How's it going? How's it going? Let's see. Oh, I appreciate that, Leona. Thank you. I know I got a little bit spicy earlier. I didn't mean to get too crazy, but man, I was just getting tired of the same comments sometimes. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, come in with some like constructive evidence or facts, and maybe we can have a conversation. But just kind of spewing some of the same stuff over and over again, and then demanding things like tell us where they are and stuff like that. It's like, come on now, like. Our CMP has, done their part. They've investigated it. All right, let's see we'll move this over to the big screen. Angela goes, do we really know lie detector tests were truly passed? Yeah, that's what they said in the RCMP documents that they did. And for those that, didn't hear this earlier, we'll play it one more time. And this is, something that I'm going to play this again. This is from RCMP. RCMP guys.
And I would like to say that, this is a very tough time for the public at large, the investigators, but especially the family. I can't imagine what they must be going through. We're doing the best we can to get answers for them and everybody else in this situation. So, and I would like to say that,
So that's about this case. And I doubt they would be saying that if they failed the lie detector test, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, they came out and they said for a fact that they passed it. All right, let's see. DT, so what are the next steps for RCMP? Are they working on this daily? I doubt that they'll probably have somebody on it daily, monitoring tips and things of that nature, but I wouldn't think that there's a lot of real movement at this point, unless they have an idea of something. But if they had an idea of something, I don't think they'd be sending out cadaver dogs out into the woods and spending the effort and the mind and the money. I think they would have focused their efforts on what it is that they might have an idea of. And what I mean by that is if they suspected that somebody may have abducted the kids and they have an idea that they were abducted and taken somewhere out of the area, I doubt that they would be sending dogs into the area. Now, maybe perhaps they're unsure and they're not 100% positive and there's some information, but they still want to cross their T's and dot their I's. I think that's a possibility, but I think it most likely means by them searching out there, that nothing has come up concrete anywhere else. But I'm sure they're taking in tips and things like that, and watching surveillance and still trying to figure out what happened. But I mean, next step probably would be to go back out there and search again, to be honest with you, in a few months, maybe a year. Appreciate that, Lynn. Thank you. I appreciate that, Angel. Yes. Then I would say that wasn't a very conclusive search. I mean, there's a lot of searches that don't end up conclusive, Kent. Most searches actually don't. It's very, very difficult to find people in a haystack. You know, there's a lot of people who have been missing, and they know their, you know, law enforcement know their last digital footprint or last location, and they still can't find them. You know, the world is big and dangerous, and the you know, the forest that dense and stuff like that. It's, I mean, I think Daniel said it was a lot of marsh. So, you know, if kids fell in that, got trapped or something like that, I mean, that could have an effect too. I mean, there's so much we don't know. But Travis, what was the cause of death that boy found less than 200 yards away from the house showed? Undetermined. He was skeletal remains. Now, this case is weird, Travis, because law enforcement in this case, and I'm not one to jump to conclusions, and I'm not one to say that there's conspiracies or this or that, but in this case here with Barbara Hall, there's some interesting stuff. For one, he went out to Fredericktown. He called 911 saying that his friend was threatening him. The only person he knew there was Caleb Nanny, his friend. Caleb Nanny has said some weird things. Like, one of the things he's told investigators several times, that he had no idea how much money that Timothy had that night. And yet when he's talking to his sister, he on video says Timothy took out $160 from the ATM. But he lies to law enforcement on multiple times, but says that directly, the exact amount that he did take out. And to me, so there's a possible ATM usage on his credit card at 9/11, and his alibi is that he got arrested at 9 o'clock, and law enforcement have his arrest documented at 9 o'clock. Problem is that it was for a gas drive off, and at 10:01 a.m. he's texting, he being Caleb, saying, "I'm fixing to go to jail if I don't get this money." And he's talking about the gas drive off money. Then law enforcement, for whatever reason, and I can't describe why, but they arrested him, and while they're handcuffing him, the chief of police takes a picture, or at least somebody high up who sends the chief of police this picture. They took a picture of them putting him in handcuffs for a gas drive off. I've never seen that before, you know, and it was a weird picture. It was a picture from the side, you know, he's getting handcuffed. But the interesting thing is, when you look up the information about the picture, it says it was taken at 10:05 a.m. Now, the 911 call, that ATM footage at 9 o'clock in the morning, or 9:11, and a situation where Miss Barbara Hall was actually talking with the chief of police, and it was captured on his body cam footage. All of those pieces of information supposedly got destroyed in 3 separate lightning strikes. And then you have the body. The body was found in skeletal remains. There's pictures at the scene, and the skull is missing a tooth. By the time it gets to the coroner, the tooth is back in the skull. There's no documentation about it or anything like that. Now, the only reason somebody would do that is because they didn't want the coroner to find a reason to believe that it was a homicide. Because if they did, they got to do some sort of investigation there. So right now it's considered undetermined. And to me, I don't think law enforcement had anything to do with his death. But I'm finding out that the area had a lot of drug activity. But I do know there's one thing though. That cadaver search that hit on the shed, that shed belonged to a police officer. And law enforcement didn't search it. They left it alone. Because it was a cop that owned it. His body, that tree line they found him in, belonged to a sitting judge. That property. So, I don't know. Maybe I don't think they had anything to do with it, but maybe perhaps those individuals don't want cops snooping into them or snooping around because they might find something that they don't want people to find. That's just my opinion. But that's kind of how that case lays out. And I'm going to be talking about it probably on Saturday, guys. But yeah, they have it as undetermined as far as the cause of death. You know, he was found with his pants pulled down too, right? Cops are saying it's because of the stream, because he was found near a very weak stream. I mean, I'm talking about maybe 2 inches of water was kind of close by. Problem is the stream was going the opposite direction that the pants were pulled down from. So it doesn't make any sense either way. But I got all the evidence there. We're going to be breaking it down. If you guys really want to find out something that has some inconsistencies, those are some real inconsistencies, guys. Those are real inconsistencies. Those are hard facts. Those are hard. Like, hey, what's going on here? That's what I'm talking about when I talk about evidence, facts, and inconsistencies. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Dan, can you debunk stranger abduction, please? Not really. To a certain extent. I would say that if it's somebody that's from out of the area, it would be easier to disprove them because there's a lot of cameras, you know, surrounding. Maybe not a lot, but there's enough cameras if you go out far enough that you would be able to determine. It might be a big radius, but you'd be able to determine if somebody was coming into that area from a far enough distance. And so it'd have to be somebody within that radius. And it very well could be a lot of different people, right? Because it's not like a neighborhood where you're like, hey, we have cameras here, here, and here. So we have a radius of a few blocks of people coming into the area. This is probably miles wide. And so, you know, if their phone was in the area, they probably did some geofencing and things of that nature. So to me, it most likely would, if there was an abduction, had to be somebody that lived close. You know, I look at one person that got arrested for theft a lot and had a drug problem, apparently. And so feeding his habit with the burglaries and stealing property, going through somebody's trash is not something, you know, out of the realm of possibility with somebody who's on drugs or looking for things to fix, sell, or clean up to buy drugs. And so is that why there was a blanket taken out? You know, a lot of people look at it and be like, oh, they must have knew, whoever took the blanket out must have knew that there was a blanket inside. Not necessarily. They may have felt it and felt that it was clothes or some sort of fabric and material, thinking maybe it's clothes, tear it open, reach in, pull it out, see if it's something they can wash and clean and sell or whatever the case may be, and comes apart and they got a piece now. And you hear some kids playing and call them over. Hey, you should be in school and I'll take you to school. And then something nefarious happens. I mean, I think that those things are possible. But like I said, it's not something I can deduce out or debunk. Like I can, for instance, like with Maleyha or Daniel or some of these theories of all these other people involved. Those are easier to disprove than an outside stranger / somebody that lived close, especially somebody that lived close. That one would be hard to disprove or to debunk with the information. Now, just because I can't, like with the neighbor, just because I can't deduce it doesn't mean that law enforcement can't. And I understand that and I accept that, which is why I haven't thrown out his name out there. I'm not one of these creators that, oh, I can't I can't say that because I can't say that it wasn't him, that it must have been him. I don't make those connections like that. Because that would, I could very well be wrong. And because I can't make that connection doesn't mean that law enforcement can't make that connection. I understand that. I understand my place when it comes to that. And so that's why I haven't named him. That's why I haven't said, oh, I know it was him. I don't. I'm just saying that I personally can't deduce the information or deduce his involvement out of it. Again, that doesn't mean law enforcement can, and they very well may and already have. And so if they've done that, I mean, if I outed this guy and said, oh, it's this dude, I'd be creating another victim in this case, even if he is a dirtbag that's a thief and, you know, all this other stuff, you know. And the blanket being up so high is kind of weird and almost an indication that somebody did put it in a place where someone can see it if it was planted. And it's weird. It's weird. I'm not going to lie. Sunlight. I've always wondered if the blanket in the tree is from someone taking them in a car and throwing the blanket that was Lilly dragging around in the window because it was too obvious and blew it into the tree. I thought about that too. If not necessarily if that be the case, if it was in the roadway and maybe it got clipped onto a car bumper, and as it was driving down the street, it just unclipped and flew off into the air. The problem with it is when I looked at the video from where RCMP was searching from that area, it's going up on an incline and a pretty steep one too. It's not a shallow one. So the blanket would have had to have gone fairly high to have gone from the roadway to where it was at. You know, if you're standing next to it, it's 6 feet. But if you're standing at the roadway because of the incline, it's a lot higher than that. And so I doubt it, but plausible. It's possible. All right, I'm going to scan through this really, really fast and see what I can see because I'm already getting kind of late on here. Just nature itself can be deadly, 100%. If I don't miss anything. Thank you, Daniel. That's fascinating. Looking forward to your show on this. Yes, Timothy D's case, there's a playlist. I have a couple of things out already, including an interview with his mom, Barbara Hall. And so please go watch that. I highly recommend it. You won't be disappointed. All the plans for you to do more interviews with the family. I hope so. I do plan on I'm going to try to get Janie on. I did try to reach out to Haley. I would love to talk to Haley or Maleyha. Again, I don't believe that they had anything involved in it. You know, I don't, you know, just because I don't believe Daniel didn't do anything doesn't mean I automatically believe that all these other people were involved. I don't. I have my own opinions and my own thoughts. And I would like them to clear up some things, like when it is that they found the blanket. What time of day was it? What was the situation? Who was with you? What direction were you traveling when you found it? You know, what was the condition of it when you found it? You know, and so many other questions. There's 1,000 questions that I would love to ask her that I think not only would clear up some things for her, but for everybody. You know what I mean? We got, sorry if I mispronounced this, Bubbles and Dolls. Please hit the like and subscribe. Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your support. There was more people on that road before Haley was, and no one seen it. Wow. That's a possibility too. I mean, that's a question. Like I said, I'd love to ask her and see what kind of answer I can get. You know, Haley, if you're watching, again, I'm not trying to trap you or do anything like that. I'm literally just trying to get the truth out, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about what happened that day. What do you think about Maleyha telling 911 that the kids wandered off, but in her interview said they never wandered off? I think she was trying to put sense to things. I think initially she thought they wandered off. I think that the fact that RCMP and, well, the search crew couldn't find them right away. started to make her have doubts on them wandering off. That's why she's up all night that first night and then calls law enforcement at 3 a.m. to say that perhaps the biological father had something to do with it. Maybe that he came up and picked him up. And I think that's just a symptoms or signs of her thought process throughout the early part of this investigation, of where she was thinking, what she was putting together in her own mind and her own thoughts, trying to figure out what happened. And I think she was probably in that situation saying, hey, they couldn't have been gone long. Nobody found them. They would have been found. Something would have been found. Shoe, backpack, shirt, something would have been found. And they didn't. Maybe they didn't wander off. Now I think about it, they didn't wander off, blah, 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 blah. But I will say this, and Janie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And thank you, Lori. From what I understand, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, from what I understand when I was talking with Janie, is that Daniel's other kids had been there recently within the last couple of weeks prior to them disappearing. And they had gone out there and they had played in the back and in the woods. They had taken their backpack with them and they took some snacks and things of that nature. Kids seeing that, maybe perhaps even having fun, young kids, 6 and 4 years old, very impressionable. If they see other kids that maybe they're looking up to, maybe perhaps they think that they're cool, fun, because they're doing things that's out there. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something, that's why they took the backpack and all this other stuff, because they wanted to go do what they saw their stepbrother and sister do. You know what I mean? And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what you told me about the other kids being there and playing in a fort and stuff like that here, like right before they went missing. Lobster comes in with $2.79 super sticker. Thank you, Lobster. I appreciate that. Thank you for your donation. But why delete the text app? And this is the last one. Because I talked to Janie and Daniel, and service there sucks. And if you're going to have service, and Maleyha even said this in her interviews and stuff like that, that she required her to have an app because she couldn't get phone calls out and she had to use the Wi-Fi. She had to turn off that app because that app doesn't call 911, and she had to stand in a specific place inside of the house to make the 911 call so that it reached out and got out. Now, once she left and she moved away, she no longer needed the app to make the phone calls and stuff because now she was in a place that had better service and she can utilize that for her phone calls and text messages. So it had nothing to do with anything nefarious. Now, she deleted the app, but I don't believe the information and everything else got deleted. I think they were able to pull up some stuff. I mean, that's kind of the interpretation that I got from the documents. But thank you so much. And Lynn, Daniel, blanket could have smelled of the house, smells cooking and animals getting it. That's possible too. That's good point. Is it possible that animals may have, they may have been attracted to it because of the smells that were coming off of it? And did a bird or did a larger animal fling it or move it or something of that nature and it get caught up in the tree? I don't know. I would love to talk to the person that found it, Haley, and ask her about the condition, how it was wrapped up out there. Was it rolled around? Did it look like somebody just threw it? Did it look like it could have fallen from the sky into it? So many questions I have. Thank you, Elizabeth Murray, with your $10 super sticker. Or Murphy, I apologize. Thank you so much. Lobster, thank you. Lori, thank you. And Bubbles and Dolls, thank you again. You guys rock. I'm going to be back on tomorrow night. I'm going to have on Dr. Vona. We're going to talk about all this stuff. She's a psychologist, a doctor in psychology, and she's going to bring up what she sees with Maleyha and Daniel and the kids missing. Professional. Again, I like to have professional guests, and we're going to have a professional guest tomorrow. So hit the like button, subscribe, ring that notification bell. We'll be on, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, we'll see you then. Peace.